conversation. I have a very interesting panel in the studios of UBC, and we're going to be discussing something that is very important. We are talking education in this country. Nelson Mandela once said that education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world. And I believe that we can as well use this very weapon to change the world that we want to live in as a country, Uganda. And we are looking at those steps that we can take as the country to achieve a result-oriented education system in Uganda. To understand all this, I have a very special team of guests in the studios of UBC that we have put together. They are all the stakeholders when we talk about the education system in Uganda, and we believe that we're going to learn a lot from them. A privilege and honor to have you, Gilbert Sima, the manager, secondary department, coming from National Curriculum Development Center. It is a privilege having you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Amon.
Good
morning, listeners and viewers.
Interesting. It's a privilege having you. We also have a privilege to have Butebo Godfrey, is the chairman, National Coalition of Uganda Private School Teachers Association and Unions. A privilege having you on the show.
Thank you so much, Moderator Amon, and good morning, listeners outside there.
Interesting. We would love also to know, you have heard from National Council, I have National Curriculum. We also have had the representative of the teachers, and all these government agencies. I mean, the other one at least is private now plus government. Would love to know from the other side, outside the government, and we have also a researcher and someone who has been known for mastering the education system, has been very vocal when it comes to education, and this is none other than Dr. Christopher Wanga, who is the head of research and ideology coming from UPC. A privilege having you, Doctor.
It is not the question of being vocal. Education is the engine of development for the country. Otherwise, good morning and greetings from Uganda People's Congress, the party president, Honorable Jim Makena, the fraternity at Uganda House, and across the country and in the diaspora. And they are listening, and they are very appreciative that UBC Ground Zero brings pertinent topics with the stakeholders.
Interesting.
Yes.
You've heard from my guests in the studios of UBC, and you can really tell the kind of conversation that we're going to have, and also you who are on YouTube, you'll be able to watch live the guests and also follow the conversation. And we're also expecting Dr. Lawrence Muganga, the Vice Chancellor of Victoria University, to be joining us later on. We are live on UBC radio, on Twitter, UBC radio, on Facebook, and also we have our studio lines in case you want to be part of the conversation. You'll be reaching us on 776-511-426 to contribute to this discussion. Our discussion is going to be centered on the new curriculum, which allows students to study only 12 subjects in senior 1 and 2, and with 11 of these being compulsory and 1 which is selective. We are looking at the compulsory subjects, English and mathematics, and the rest. We are looking at some of the subjects that have been removed and those that have been also added. Swahili, I heard it is now compulsory, but I cannot explain this because we have someone who is in studio and is going to be educating us. But we also love to know how this curriculum is going to be directing this country into a result-oriented education system in this country. Sima, if we can start from here, you can update the country on what NCDC does, generally on your mandate before we go into the curriculum.
Thank you very much, Moderator. The National Curriculum Development Center, NCDC, is a government agency of the Ministry of Education. And our work as an agency of the Ministry of Education revolves around reviewing the curriculum, identifying the need for a curriculum review or reform. We do research and then go through the process of curriculum review, and we orient or we roll it out to the final implementers. We orient and train teachers on how to implement the curriculum that has been developed by NCDC. We also make sure that we vet the curriculum instructional materials that the teachers are supposed to use, and all matters around curriculum for pre-primary, primary education, and secondary education are part of our mandate. In brief, that's what I can say.
Interesting. Maybe before we go into that, I can as well cross to Sobozi to know more about the institution that he represents here as teachers and your role in education.
Thank you so much, Amon, and listeners outside there. As you have heard from Gilbert, that's the core mandate of the National Curriculum Development Center. In principle, it develops what we implement. Once they put into place...
You the teachers.
We the teachers. I'm the voice of the teachers. And specifically for the teachers in the private schools. Now, the challenge comes about with the rollout. I'm sure as we go along, we're going to discuss the pros and the cons of the same. We need also to realize, he has said that after research, they do the needful. Is there a need to review, or there is no need for a review? Now we assume that for this to happen, there was a need to review. I was among the originals of the review panel for the primary school curriculum, which shifted from the subject-based to the theme-based, today which we are calling the thematic curriculum for the primary school. And I was also involved in the processes for the Chirase, the lower secondary school curriculum. So we are discussing from an informed viewpoint. However, there are enormous challenges outside there when it comes to the implementation bit. And the onus starts and ends with the government of Uganda. So as we discuss, we have to be cognizant that the implementation of these programs is one of the biggest challenges that we are facing as a country. And not only in the education sector, but across board. Because that's why you hear people say, especially in, the politicians, they tell you policies are developed in Uganda and they're implemented somewhere else. Because we have got very good policies, but when it comes to implementation, we find it a big challenge. And we need to ask ourselves why. Now, take for instance, we have the private schools and we have the public schools. You have guided that we are going to discuss UNEB has had the last cohort of students sitting for the old curriculum. By implication, that means we are now implementing the new curriculum. But the question is this curriculum being implemented if we moved outside these studios and with this curriculum? The Ministry of Education and Sports itself in its report talked of only 32% of teachers being in the know of the new secondary school curriculum. You will realize that now private schools are higher. They are more in number in terms of provision of service, in terms of provision of education as a service for secondary level than they are for government schools. Now, if you have only got less than 40% of teachers who are in the know of the current curriculum now being implemented, what do you think is happening outside there in the private schools? I will tell you without mincing my words. I have a privilege that oftentimes I do traverse this country, specifically doing my work within the private fraternity, the private school teachers fraternity. A number of private schools, they are telling you they are integrating the old curriculum and the new curriculum. They are teaching students normally like it has been, including Saturdays, today is Saturday, you will find that secondary schools, private ones, a good number of them are open outside there, and they are busy teaching students. And when you reach there, you don't believe that this is happening under our watch. But these are the challenges which we are facing. So as we do these reforms, the challenge comes at the implementation win-win situation.
Interesting. Dr. Rwanga, you come in now for UPC, and in part of your mandate, how do you come in this education, and how best can we achieve a result-oriented education before Simba takes us through the curriculum?
Thanks very much, Comrade Amoni Butega, for this important discussion you have brought up. Of course, any education system has to have its history, and this is the history of education. Unfortunately, Uganda has had its education system, which you can break into three general pieces. One, it was the first old school, and this is when we sit around with our parents in the evening, was well facilitated. It was the firewood which was needed, the food which was served, and the lecturers or the instructors were the elders, and the pupils were the children or grandchildren. The only serious disturbance they could have are the mosquitoes. But the mosquitoes don't come near where there is a fireplace. And in that sort of school, old school, they were teaching our cultural values. They were teaching how you can graduate into manhood, into womanhood, okay? And they were teaching how you can make use of the environment and how you can be brought up as a decent, hardworking citizen of the society. And indeed, now from there, we moved on to the colonial education system. And the colonial education system, if you restrict it to Uganda's case, it was to educate the children of the chiefs and the big shots whom they had worked with or whom they had incorporated. So it was not meant for you, okay? It was meant for a special group of people, and it was even designed more to do clerical work, being good housewives, being good husbands, being very obedient to the colonial system, okay? But of course, there were some other ingredients which came in that students like Nkuruma, students like Kaunda, developed global awareness through the mission education, and we see the mission boys like Nyerere demanding now for independence. That was the colonial setup. Then we come now when Africa has got her independence and we are in charge. If you are to visit the UPC manifesto of March 1962, Article 16, it is talking of free primary education, plenty of food, maximum employment, free medical services. And at the same time also, it was saying that we have just had our independence, with not more than 400 students, graduates. So we need to double our effort or triple our effort, and we produce as much as possible manpower. And that manpower should be as efficient, even more efficient than the former colonial masters. But how are we going to do it? We are not going to do it at one go. Okay, we need to plan it in phases. But ultimately, we want that manpower to be more committed to Uganda and to contribute to efficiency and to contribute to more increased production, such that even when you are in Chigezi, when you are in Karamoja, you can walk and you see and you enjoy the independence. So that was the target. And eventually, we said nobody should be left out. When resources allow, we shall have not only free primary education, but compulsory primary education as a bigger target, as a bigger goal. Okay? And when you have worked on primary, then it gives you capacity to look beyond. And let me explain this word because they don't understand it. When we talk about primary education, that is the heart of the education. You cannot become a professor, you cannot become who unless you have done a thorough primary education. And the primary education opens your wings. So our planning was centered there mainly, and we said let us open up in other branches. What I want to emphasize here, our brother from the Curriculum Development Center, I respect you 100%. Goodwill, must have a political philosophy, must have that greater vision. What do you want us to achieve? A politician will tell you, I want Uganda, which can produce doctors who can work across the globe. I want Uganda, which can produce teachers who can teach across the globe. For us, we are taught in that sort of system, and that's why I managed to offer my expatriate service in Zambia for over 15 years as an expatriate teacher. And then also I went to Sudan, where I helped for about 5 years. And now also Uganda People's Congress has said, you are the right man for ideology school. Come here. We don't want you to go anywhere. Okay.
Don't drag the technical person into politics.
No, it is not politics. It is not politics. What I'm trying to say.
That preserve is for me and you who can speak.
What I'm trying to say here, comrade, from the private school.
You cause him
what I'm saying is, okay, I apologize, but what I'm saying from here, that whatever happens, him is a technical person. The political will should be there to implement what he has said.
All right.
The political philosophy must be there. Okay?
Yeah, Amon.
Yes. Please.
If I want to revert to Doctor, I listened and I listened. You see, these people of UPC, they are still clinging. You know, we call it slumbering in lost glory. During their time, they did very good things, and they also did very bad things. But when they lost power, they have never accepted that power went. Now we are discussing education. Can we limit ourselves to education? We critique the current system as it is. Education into the politics of the day.
All right.
And then we shall discuss the political talk. Now
That
let us
is
be
interesting.
technical.
But
And we'll continue with this.
That's interesting.
Harmony,
Indeed.
can you give me 1 minute?
I will give you some seconds.
Yes,
Need
can
cross
you give me 1
to
second?
Sema, please.
There is nothing on earth which happens and the politician is not having an input. Whether it is the education, it is the politician who will allocate.
Asima, let's go into the details of the new curriculum and how best it's going to shape the education system in Uganda, because we're talking to know the details and what are some of the changes that you have put and have you decided that this country should take in the next generation. Gone are the days when we started the European history, the American history, we name all the places.
Must add value to the people to be there part of it. And when it comes to result oriented education, it should be an education that is measurable. When I go to speak in the way they think, the things they do, what shows that actually these people have gone to have achieved a certain level of education. What skills can they display, and how do they apply their knowledge in the real world? Because there is the real world that we are in, and the real world that we are in needs skills. And the goal is to prepare our students to succeed in life. Now, when it comes to the education that we have been having, the education that we have been having, like Dr. said, we inherited it from the colonial government. And when it comes to secondary education in particular, from the time of the colonial system to 2020, we had never had a major change in that system of education. The pre-colonial system was hands-on, followed a behaviorist approach in a sense that you saw what I am doing as your parent, and I talked to you about what I am doing, and you learned from me, and you tried to imitate me in what I'm doing, and in so doing you learn. Among the things learned was hunting. Among the things learned was storytelling. Among the things learned was how to become a man, how to construct huts, and so on. All that was education. And even up to now, it is still relevant. So when it comes to the 21st century now, the education that we are changing from was mainly knowledge-based. Knowledge-based in a sense that it emphasized Mr. Busobozi's ability to accumulate as much knowledge as possible. That's why we learned about rainlands. We are able to name as many countries as possible. We got to know when each country got independence. We learned about lumbering in North America. We learned about all these places.
Okay.
But we did not deal with transfer of that knowledge to real life. So
are being incorporated those in the new curriculum?
The curriculum that is now, that we are now running, the lower secondary curriculum, if we are to be specific, even the primary curriculum, by the way, the one that whose role competency based. Competency in a sense that it focuses on the learner's ability, the learner's acquisition of skills that are relevant in society. The competency-based curriculum is focusing on the ability to convert those skills or apply those skills in life where you're placed. The one at lower secondary also emphasizes things to do with acquisition of 21st century skills, which were not in the old one. 21st century skills, I'm talking about critical thinking, teamwork, collaboration, creativity, innovation. If we can just slightly go back, you'll find that in our education system, all of us where we studied from, you were required to hide your work such that your neighbor does not copy you. You were taught to be a selfish individual throughout education. And that now we are trying to say there is no way you can survive in society if you're selfish. Therefore, you need to learn to work in teams, learn to collaborate, learn to ICT. ICT previously was not there. And this being the first major change, and looking at the world we are living in, every learner should have some skills that are ICT oriented in order to as a way of preparing them for the technology driven world. Another major change that has been there has been the change in methodology. My brother Busobozi was saying that if you go now, teachers are teaching on a Saturday, when in actual sense the program runs from 8 up to 2:50, and then they have failed to follow instructions, which is a simple generic skill that we are trying to impart in our learners, such that the next generation performs much better than us. there is an issue of change in the teaching and learning approaches. Previously, we had the teacher as the source of all knowledge and information. But where we have reached, we are saying, no, I come from Mbarara, but there is and someone in Karamoja, but also there is something they can learn from me. So the methodology is learner-centered and interactive, in a sense that even the teacher who might come from West Nile has something to learn from someone from Sese. Therefore, the learner is highly engaged.
Is that part of the curriculum, or it is?
Yes, it
these
is
are things that we can learn by
the
associating
methodology.
we can study by associating with our fellows.
Yes, but when do you associate with them? When you go to school at 6 years and graduate at 24, which people are you associating with, and which system is enabling you to associate? It is the education system. So these things have to be part and parcel of the education system, such that as we grow, as we socialize, as we associate, what kind of methodology are we using in class, and we can ably transfer it from class to the society where we live.
The removal of terminal examinations, the removal of objective questions. Students are expected to produce field work report after the real field. Are these things that we can really achieve, or you have set a pace that perhaps we can realize in some time to come, not this time?
The challenge that we have is that in most cases we want to look for something that is comfortable, and we trade what is comfortable for us with what is actually needed for us to thrive as a society and as a country.
Okay, thank you.
If we are to look at if you look at what the country needs now, if you look at what it needs now, the terminal assessment that is done, what exactly does it do? Apart from you recalling what you learned and you are able to reproduce it on paper. But if you do continuous assessment, formative assessment, progressively you analyze whether, if you talk to me how to greet, have I learned how to greet? How do I do it? Do I do it with respect? And some of those things cannot be achieved in a terminal assessment system.
Okay, I'll get back to you, Sima, about what Sobozi reported to you, that 32% of the teachers who are supposed to be implementers of the curriculum that you have just developed are not, we are having 60-something percent, 68% of the teachers in this country who don't know what is really taking place. But we are talking about 4 years down the road when we have the new curriculum. Let me go back to you, Sobozi. You have heard from the curriculum NCDC, but what are some of the changes that you as the teacher have seen and realized that we can really achieve and can really change and transform the education system in Uganda? Those that you have appreciated so far.
Thank you, Amon. You see, I've been at this game for a long time, and you are aware. Now, Doctor gave a good preamble. We had our indigenous education, which the Wazungu termed as non-formal. So they chose to formalize it, and they took us to the formal sector. And education here is a new concept, the formal education. It's about 100 years. When these missionaries brought schools, and our first school was in Amiryango. But these missionaries were preparing us to read and write. And that was the basic, because they wanted us to read the Bible and understand it in preparation for the flag, because the flag followed the cross. As we were making the sign of the cross, believing in Jesus, touching our hearts, being humble, closing our eyes in prayer, they were scheming for the greater good of taking over our resources. Now, when they took charge and they started plundering our resources and they took possession of the affairs of us because we had been subdued, they trained us to become office workers. And as Doctor has told you, they were picking the children of the elite at the time. And that is why up to today we are discussing elitism, as opposed to the education that matters to you and me and to the children of our children. Now, guess what? As we progress today, changes in education after independence have been happening. This is not the first major change in this curriculum of study. We have moved a great deal. Because I remember even in those subjects during the Namasagali days of Simon Downing, I was a very young boy. They would invite me and we would do an input, especially in these subjects. For instance, how did we introduce environmental education within the teachable subjects? That was part, that was part of these reforms. Now, we come back to this current curriculum. You realize, you know the Kajubiri report. He gave very good paper, which government was supposed to implement. Then later now, we are having the Amanya Mushega Commission. The problem is not about change in the curriculum. Even if we change 101 times, provided we do not address the basics. The basics are: one, do you have the teachers
But we've been complaining that it is only...
But even if you change the content in the curriculum, by the way, this content does not necessarily change. Doctor told you a very good thing, and which is the truth. Once you get the basic education, which is the primary, you learn how to read and how to write. That means you can access information at any level in your life because you can teach yourself. Today we have got homeschooling. I don't have to go to school to be taught. This is the computer era. We are talking about artificial intelligence. We are having this. By the way, this period is called the information era. Do I have to sit in class and listen to the teacher giving me instruction? Why? This is an information age. I have to learn how to read and write, interpret symbols, do the mathematical concepts.
But suppose to you, this new curriculum is not a game changer in any way?
It is not a game changer in any way. It only facilitates the learning, teaching process with ease because it is talking to the modern times, the current times of the day of the 21st century, well aligned with books. And remember, for us, we are still using pen and paper. People are thinking on computer. We are still beating children to write properly. And yet somebody is typing on a computer. Now, what is this kind of education that we are talking about? Now, let us move forward. I have advocated, and I will still say it. The problem has come from passing examinations. During my time of study, they used teachers, both academics and handwork. Because I remember very well, we would begin class at 8 o'clock in the morning with assembly. 8:30 lessons begin. We would have a break for 30 minutes. And what were we doing during the break? I'm talking now about primary. Real playing, football, netball, rope skipping, burning all the calories. We go back to class in the afternoon. At 3:30 we get a break. And the break at 3:30 was for nothing but games and sports. People explore themselves. They get tired, then the bell rings, you assemble, they give you instructions, and you go home to manage the affairs of the home. And we would move in cycles. So on a Wednesday, it was a preserve that from 2 o'clock until time of going home, you will do nothing but handwork. You go fetch the clay, you make the pots, you go fetch the papyrus reeds, you make the mats, you go fetch the fibers, and you tie the balls. It was real holistic education. Now, over time, when we got serious introduction of private schools where I belong, we went for the softer target. Because now we shifted from education and we went into passing examinations. Because the only way you would promote your investment is by showing your client that you are doing a good job. All students have passed in first grade. I have said it before, both off the microphone and even when I'm now on air, that UNEB needs to be reformed. And my advocacy is UNEB should be pulled from where it is, taken back to Chambogo at the National Curriculum Development Center, and it becomes a department, an assessment department of the NCDC, such that these
Not
two,
an independent institution.
not an independent institution. It was wrong. Actually, that act.
So to you see NCDC be able to do the UNEB work?
The two go hand in hand, absolutely. Because UNEB should be able to do what NCDC tells us. But now there is the challenge. I'm the only one who has the privilege.
You're saying that when we...
I will tell you without fear of favor, Amon, you know UNEB generates money. NCDC does not generate money. So as government, what do you go for?
The one that makes money.
Absolutely, because you have to run the affairs of the state. But now, I'm telling you from a professional point of view.
But apart from making money, there are those that we need to plan for this country. That's why we have national
and
planning
that is
authority.
why I'm doing this advocacy. Because NPA, by the way, I'm going to find a way and I write to NPA. They get UNEB. I'll make it official. They get UNEB. They take it back to Chambogo, such that the assessment department, they rhyme, they talk to each other in full, not this collaboration, not this collaborative working which they have today. Because UNEB now is independent and NCDC is independent. So the two bodies are independent of each other. And yet, UNEB produces what curriculum has cooked. So UNEB serves what the NCDC has cooked. But do you know the ingredients in the food? So, and because of that, so we have turned education into a passing mealy. Do you know what that one means? My child has to pass with the first grade. And then the press, the media jumps into fray. We promote the narrative.
Okay. Interesting. Dr. Rwanga, you've heard also from Sovozi raising pertinent issues about the same, but what would you think that would transform this education system? In your government, UPC, which Sovozi made a comment on, teachers, someone told me that teachers then, the best performers in school, were the ones that were selected and retained to, the best performers in school were retained to be teachers. Same strategy in China. But currently, someone was telling me that best performers are in different sectors and fields, where those that have failed, I'd say it is a statement from someone. Those who have failed are the ones that are encouraged to do the teaching. What do you expect? What do you expect to be the outcomes, or what do you think will be the result at the end of the day when the teachers are scoring less?
Comrade Yaman, thanks very much for that wonderful question, and I also have to be very thankful to the fellow panelists, the way they are helping to bring out these scenarios which are bogging down our education system. But before you go to that end product, that somebody who has not performed very well is the one who has been designated in this route. What we need to appreciate, where are we with the simple basics in the education system? My brother here mentioned something and stopped somewhere. Let me pick it from there. If we are talking about simple basics in the education system, whether it is results-oriented, whether it's knowledge-based, as our CDC has helped us to understand it in that manner, we have to go to the simple basic. What is the ratio of the teacher to the students or to the people?
The implementers.
Yes. When we are doing our stuff, when we are in charge, we strive to have the ratio of 1 to 40. Okay? And in some situations, it could be even 33, 34. I was at Namilyango College, by the way, and we never used it to exceed 40 at O level. Then at A level, it was at 30 and the sciences 30, having a rough figure of 120 per A level. Now, we are losing at a teacher-student ratio. Whether you go to the first powerful schools, they are not at it. The best they are at it is about 80, 90, 70. Yet our other brothers where we are now trying to learn, and they used it to learn from us when things were working very well. These are some of the Asian tigers. Their ratio now, they are trying to push it to 25, 20, and even 15. Okay? Such that once it is that ratio, a teacher within 4 walls of the classroom can really have personal attention to each and every learner. And if it is to ensure that there is anything remedial or whatever should be done within a short spell of time, it is possible. And it means that even the teaching will be more interactive because you are not dealing with bigger numbers. Okay? You are dealing with the right numbers which you can take on. Okay? But now, that is not happening anywhere in most of our schools. So we now force the teacher to do the impossible, which they don't like very much. This is now lecture method. Okay? He has to stand there and preach as if he's a preacher. And you can't even blame him because of the situations which are on the ground. So that now denies us the quality because we have not sorted out the simple basic of the ratio of the teacher to a student. Whoever comes out of that system, okay, we will not be much better. Okay. Then the other element we have had, which again is a simple basic and it is difficult to implement, is the student textbook ratio. For us, when we are studying, we used to have even these good desks when you reach senior 3, senior 4, where each desk you pull out to a powerful textbook, a powerful textbook, a powerful textbook. A teacher just says, can you open this page? Okay. It was possible we could fill the books. Okay. And when some of us were working to intimidate senior ones, we could hold those big volumes and we say it is Cantab. Okay. You so yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. But now, much as we are putting it at a level of textbook, this now goes to whatever you are doing in the classroom.
Okay.
Whether it is the sciences, a teacher will demonstrate there. And then it drops down to you to hold your beaker, to hold your test tube, and to light and to mix whatever you want to mix. Okay?
Are you saying that those things are no longer there?
They are not there. There are so many of these people who go even for exams when they are seeing the facility for the first time. Okay. Okay. Now, when you have such challenges,
that is a sweeping statement. You have no research to that effect, do you?
My friend, go and visit most of the schools. Go and visit most of their science laboratories. Go and visit. You will come back and you say, Mr. Rwanga said this and is serious about it.
Thank you.
Then the other element I must say.
The last one on that?
Yes. The last element I must say is that our biggest challenge is not the Curriculum Development Center. Our biggest challenge is to want everybody to have the best at the same time. What am I trying to derive at? This new syllabus, the curriculum they are bringing forward, is good, okay? But why don't we do it on a pilot basis? And we have a few selected
with going to
let them be ahead. By the way,
came back to the primary school curriculum. When we reformed, we did a pilot for 2 years. We did a baseline survey to see the effect of this curriculum vis-a-vis the subject-based curriculum before it was rolled out nationally. I have told you, the challenge is not with the NCDC. The challenge is with the other arm of government, which does the supervision of the implementation of this curriculum. I shall talk, gloss over, speak very good English, and we shall have no change.
Are you saying that the money they were bought is much less compared to what were
Now, Amon, shillings. Now, tell me.
100 shillings?
Yes, 100 shillings per day to educate a pupil in a primary school. Tell me, which kind of education? 120 students. Tell me, how can that one be implemented? How will the supervision take place? So we need to look at the bigger picture as we discuss this. NCDC has no problem. The problem is with the implementation bit, because the politics at play, which doctor was talking about, we are saying we have a policy on UPE. UPE means everybody should go to school, but it is not compulsory. It is not compulsory education. It is universal primary education. Then you have the universal secondary education. And the policy says, do not pay any money. Now, if you are telling me don't pay any money, you will realize that these schools for the primary, they are managed by the manager, ones who manage the affairs of the society. Of the society. Now, guess what happens? What happens in the long run is that these people, after realizing the government is saying there is no money to be paid by the parent, which is called cost sharing, they slowly pick their own children and they put them in the private schools. And guess what? The managers, the policy makers, the ones who are supposed to develop these systems, the bosses of Gilbert here, slowly, they start formulating their own schools, and then they get the friends to also take their children in the schools which they have built, and then they come here to earn a salary. Now, I don't know where the word conflict of interest starts and where it ends. So not until we fix all these issues, the rest we can only talk about.
Interesting. Sima, if you can come in here. So obviously mentioned earlier on that we have 32 teachers who have been enrolled in this, and the other 68%. The 68% don't know or how best way they can go about this new curriculum. I thought, like Dr. Luanga put it well, we would have first involved the teachers. And because after all, they're the teachers that are going to implement this curriculum. You wanted to deal with the students before the teachers?
Okay, I can deal with both. If you are to say 32% has been oriented and trained to handle the new curriculum, you're looking at the number of teachers who have done with a team from NCDC. And we know that in the country there is, we are using a model of teacher training, especially when we are orienting them to a new curriculum, and that is the cascade model. So the 30% or 32% that you're talking about is the team that has interacted with the team from NCDC. Now, according to the cascade model, this 30% should have taken it further at school level. But the information that we are getting shows that whenever we send these people, the teachers that we interact with, the 30%, when they reach, either they do not carry on with the orientation at school level, and because of that, now we are being forced to think of alternative ways through which we can reach out to all the 100% of the teachers, which is not a simple task. But the truth is, if we were to be realistic, the 30%, once well equipped, they should have cascaded this training to their fellows at school level. Because if you're to ask, which school has not had at least 3 teachers trained, you might not get it. If it is there, that school has an open invitation to all schools, irrespective of whether you are government or private. So to me, or to us, the 30% should have been sufficient if every stakeholder did their job. But now that some stakeholders have not done their job, we have to come up with means of filling the gap. And that is coming up with alternative approaches that can help us to reach out to the remaining 60%. Unfortunately, we have lost time when it comes to that.
We have lost time when it comes to implementing that. That is SIM coming from National Curriculum Development Center. And we're taking a very short break. And when we return, we're going to return with Dr. Lawrence Muganga, the Vice Chancellor of Victoria University. Privilege having you and the dear team. You is part of us from the other side of radio. After the break, I'm going to be reading the messages and calls on 0776 511 426. And your messages come through on 0701 24 26 47. Ground Zero takes a very short break. I'm coming back in just a bit. I pray you don't go away. SEMA is the Manager Secondary Department coming from National Curriculum Development Center, and we're talking about how we can achieve a result-oriented education system in Uganda. 776-511-426 is the number you can call and be part of the conversation, but also raise your concerns, and 0701-2426-47. Before I go into the messages, I can see them coming through. Please keep them coming through. I'll be reading one by one and also picking your calls. I'd love to start to come in with the Vice Chancellor. Privilege having you on the show. We are talking about achieving result-oriented education system. You've been very much vocal and raising a very pertinent campaign on how best we can shape the education of this country. I welcome you to this edition, sir.
Very much, Amon. Thank you to the listeners of UBC. Good morning, everyone. I was grappling with something, but I'm also very much assured that the men you've listened to are more than able to articulate the issues and opportunities we have in our education sector. So I'm just here to add to that amazing voice that has been already shared. So I'm sure we are all grappling to achieve the same outcome. We are looking for value for money that is really being spent in trying to achieve what we could really refer to as quality education. It can be called quality if you go by the policy as it is and the results that are coming out. If you're looking for A's, if you're looking for 4s, if you're looking for D1s, and you're getting them, you're going to say that that is quality because that's the system, how it has been set up. But definitely, we also know historically that that is not a sign of anything that is showing value for money. We can do better as a country. We can come up with a greater education system. We can come up with an amazing assessment model, better than what we have today. That is really geared, whatever we have today is geared towards creating, wasting resources in the first place. Number two, enriching maybe those who own schools, because today they don't sell competencies, they sell grades, and the mindset of a parent has been really attuned to the fact that if their kids are getting these 4s and 8 in 8 or something, those first grades, they think that is where success lies. I have bad news for a parent who has such a mindset. There is no such a 4 that is going to define the success of your child. No, it is the competencies, the skills, how to learn, how they learn to live with the people, and exposure and everything. In other words, how can they do something tangible and they can even show it to the world that they have done something and change a particular status quo, solve a particular problem. That is when they are going to succeed. But a grade is not going to help any child, and definitely not a community. It will not help our country. So we'll always play a catch-up game. I don't know if we'll even ever catch up to those countries who are even ahead of us if we continue implementing a system like this one. So the value for money, what you have referred to as a result-oriented kind of assessment or education, it is still wanting, and we can do better. Thank you, Amon.
Interesting. Dr. Muganga, someone spending 20 years out of school, and he goes to the cafe for his or her resume or a CV to be typed because he or she has no knowledge on how best he can use the computer.
I can chip in there quickly, Emon, for the listeners, to paint a picture, a bigger context for us. While we are even grappling with the issue of a good or quality education, what we call quality today, no one is even talking about technology, right? And that's what you were alluding to shortly. No one is talking about technology. Yeah, and every parent is buying everything from a pencil, a pen, books, to other, even uniforms for these kids, uniforms to wear for Monday, for Tuesday, for Wednesday, until even Sunday. right? And they are not even buying a laptop, a tablet, a phone, or anything. And they have been told that using phones in schools, it is almost criminal. You can't. But technology is eating us up on a daily basis. So at the end of the day, a child seated in Kampala here or any part of Uganda that is going to stay in the same field with a child who is seated in Finland, who is seated in Sweden, who is seated in Australia, who is seated everywhere, because the world has become one common place for us to play from. And how do you expect this child who has zero competences when it comes to technology to really compete with their peers around the world? And we are seeing this. So this child is simply being subjected to a malpractice called examination assessment, right? And I call it a malpractice because it does so many things. It deprives the child to think creatively, to think innovatively, to be forward thinking. It causes them anxiety, it causes them pressure, it causes them depression. And at the end of the day, we have a child just operating like a robot. They are supposed to remember everything that they have been asked. They are supposed to recall. They are supposed to memorize, because a teacher is telling them that I've given you 100% during my teaching, standing in front of you. You have to remember everything and give it to me. And if you give me anything less than 100%, it better be 95, 90, then you get a 1 or a D1 or anything. But if you give me 20, then you are a failure. And in the latest way, you will be ungraded. You will be given a letter U. So you are nowhere. Do you know the stigma that causes to the parent who has been paying fees to this child? The stigma it really emits to this child to fit in society. They are wherever they walk, wherever they go around, they think they are the biggest failures society has ever produced. Yet they have been tested only for only 4 subjects in 8 hours, each subject 1.5 hours or 2 hours, for them to tell a story that happened in the last 7 years, in the last 7 years or 4 years, and later on, if you are in senior 6, 2 years. So you are told to remember everything that happened to you 7 years, 4 years, 2 years. So at the end of the day, when they ask you, what can you do? What can you create? You cannot create anything. You have nothing to show for everything for all the years you have spent in school. But you are just waiting to go to university. And when you go to university, universities are also waiting for you to be tormented further and to kill the inner person in you further. How? They will receive you, and if you have not passed to be on government sponsorship, your parents or any guardians or sponsors are going to pay some money, and you'll be in university. They are going to sit you in a classroom Monday to Friday, a month, a year, 3 years. If you're doing a degree of 3 years, if 4 years, you're going to sit there. You spend those years in a classroom, zero technology exposure. And then at the end of the day, when you get out of the bridge to go to the labor market, the man, the woman who is willing to employ you is asking for 2, 3, 4 years of experience. You have graduated with 0 years of experience. What are you going to do in the community? And if you're very unlucky, you spent all the years, 20 years in a boarding school, extracted out of the community. You know nothing about problems of society. You live in an artificial environment in a boarding school. You wake up in the morning, you go for prep, you go for classes, you go for some kind of playing, and then you shower, you have dinner, you go back for prep, you go to sleep, you repeat that for 20 years, and then you become a professional dependent who is scheduled. You know nothing about the world, and then you finish university with 0 years of experience, and society is expecting you to come out and solve the country's problems. I am sorry to say you'll solve 0 problems because you know nothing about society. The education never prepared you to solve any problem around us. So no wonder we have more than 150,000 graduates coming out. If they are lucky, because there is always some need to solve, to occupy some positions at around 10 to 20,000. The rest will always remain without a job because they can't create one. They're expecting someone to create them, and no one is there to create them. So now remember the grade you got a 4 in primary. If you are very, very lucky, you'll get a job. If you are very unlucky, the guy who dropped out of school, the guy who got 30, maybe is the one who is he has created a company, an organization, a business, is the one who is going to employ you. That is where we are as the education of this country. But we can do better. We can rethink how we develop our curriculum or curricula, how we assess this business of UNEB bringing to us national exams, PROE, UCE, UACE. We need to rethink that, and we need to have a curriculum that promotes continuous assessment, that is grounded in the vicinity, in the environment of a child, to make sure that a child understands where they are, who they are, before we even think about something else. And then it can teach them about the region and then the global affairs of this world. Thank you very much.
Interesting. If you can allow me go through the comments or messages from the other listeners from the other side of radio. Masaba John said our children are conditioned in one way or the other. They have been put to think what the system wants them to think. At 10 years, a child in China at 10 years can make something new by his or her own, but our graduate from our mighty universities here in Uganda can't do anything. Barbara, you say you are in Gulu. She said, I am bothered about the monetization of education in Uganda. This thing of rewarding teachers is something that is old-fashioned. We don't have good teachers and bad teachers. This is watering down all the achievements that we have in the education system. Jimmy, you are listening in from Lila. You say let's reduce on the time that our children have to go through the system. In 19 to 20 years in school is nothing when you have done nothing. Hands-on. I am Samuel Kakaire. I am in Bugolobi. My boss is opting for employees with lower grades, and when we asked him, he said those he has ones with the others, they passed not on their own, and they can't defend those grades. I am Okelo. I'm Okelo. The profession is running. The problem is that we have teachers who are not qualified, and they were formerly failures, so they are failing our children as well. But the other thing is that we have professionals running different sectors and professionals. You find a teacher operating a UBC.
UBC Ground Zero.
You are live and clear, sir.
Good morning. Like he has almost said everything that was on my mind. But I want to stress out, I think, like 2 points on the education we have in Uganda. I think we are not honest with ourselves when it comes to education, because the whole point of education would be someone to be educated and put hands on something that he has learned from the school for 20 years. But today we have policy, research, and all things that they do. They always forget the end results of a degree or what knowledge you have acquired. So we end up rotating the same thing. I also want to straight out give a question to the gentleman or from the curriculum that will be different from the other curriculum, because I find it to be almost the same process. As long as we have not nurtured or got out talents and developed skilled people. Today, someone graduates and he says that he is graduating as an engineer, but he can't even, prepare anything that has to do with engineering or anything. Again, he has to go into skilling for 2 years. Why don't we have a process where we can have vocational schools being given money, at least to the point where they can compete globally. Told how the machine works, they are told how things operate. That's why people are complaining every day when we have engineers from China doing everything almost in Uganda, you see. And also the issue with government. I think the government is not fair to us as citizens and as Australia. Education is free
the last
in
one on that,
government
sir.
schools. Education, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, education is free, like in countries like Canada and Australia. And not even a parent can stress out to take a child in a private school, because the government stress out all their resources to government schools,
Okay.
such that students are capable and they need and they have everything they need to do.
Thank
I think
you.
the government is doing us a disservice
Okay.
when they are not doing enough with their UPE and UCE. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Tony, and thank you for being part of this edition of UBC Ground Zero. And 776511426 is the number you can call. UBC Radio.
Good morning.
A very good morning to you. Your name and where you're calling us from?
Okay, this is Shalma, Pastor. Okay, I may say like about the question. It's like the new curriculum which they have introduced. It's like I wanted my child to study from senior 1 up to senior 3 from that school. Then senior 4 up to senior 6. I may change him over her to another school. But you may find that the new curriculum that they have introduced, they are saying that the 20% of the marks they are sending it to your neighbor, which you can't allow me to change my child from that school. Because when I change to another school, the school where she is going, there is no, his results are not there. Over he is not registered in the other book of the other school. Now, what should I do? And this, it's like undermining the teachers, because they went for training for colleges because of the old curriculum, so they know how to teach the old curriculum. Now they have introduced the new curriculum. Now they again making teachers to go to school again to learn the new curriculum that they have introduced. You may find that for them, they have introduced the new curriculum, but they also don't know how to teach. So they are giving teachers much work again to go to school.
Issues here to be addressed by the people I have in the studios. Let's keep them coming through if time allows. We're going to be reading them all. But UBC Radio.
Yes, this is Juma from Busega.
You are live and clear. If you can use a few seconds, sir.
Thank you so much. But those ones who are bringing issues, controversial matters that are new curriculum, old curriculum, they have today. They acquired that knowledge during the old curriculums. But now they're triggering it highly for the current generation to adopt to new, acquire what they want the nation to adopt to. So what do we need? We need sensitization to be massively. Above all, when they're bringing new things like that as a project from the government,
Okay.
they put much money, and at the end of the day, they fail to do the accountability about it. We end up in corrupt country.
Okay.
We want to fight
Thank
bad
you.
manners in this country. Even we are going to call them thieves. We don't want theft.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Papa.
God bless you so much, our dear callers from the other side of radio. Thank you for being part of
Amen.
us. And this is UBC. We are live on 4 radio stations. We are on UBC Radio. We are on UBC Butebo, covering all parts of this country. And also we are streaming live on YouTube. In case you want to watch my guest in the studios live, you just go to YouTube. We are live on UBC Radio or UBC Ground Zero. If we can use these minutes to answer the questions coming in from the other side of radio and from the people of Uganda who are part of this. Allow me to start with you, the NCDC, Sima Gilbert.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you, our listeners, those who have called in and those who have sent their questions. Tony and Juma, let me start by saying that developing a curriculum is one thing, but the implementation of this curriculum can make or break it.
Sure.
So the implementation does not necessarily involve the people who developed it that much, but it involves the rest of us as stakeholders, including parents, as teachers, head teachers, and so on. Now, the challenge is that as we sensitize, a number of us are still not believing, which is okay, because change takes time. Some are still in resistance, which is okay, but we are sharing with you researched information that an education system that cannot directly feed into the community where these learners are acquiring this education from is not helping you. Let me take an example of if we were to give, and I asked you to describe a D1, what does it mean? What can you say about a person who has a D1 and how they are different for a person who got, let's say, a credit 6? If we were able to have a descriptor for those, apart from saying this one has passed, this one is struggling, you might not ably describe that. So we are saying that across the world, with the exposure that we have got, whenever we get exposure, we bring back home the best practices. And we are trying to share with you the best practices. And one of them is an education should be feeding into the community where it is being offered.
Thank you, Sima. Let me cross to you, Busobozi. If we can use these few minutes, because we have a few minutes to end this discussion. Barbara Inugulu talked about modernization of education system in Uganda, rewarding of teachers, and do we have good teachers and bad teachers, and where does this because she says it is watering down our education system and all the achievements.
Thank you so much. Now, this topic is quite interesting. For a while, we have a challenge of failure to solve our problems as a community. And yet, the whole essence of going to school is to solve societal challenges. In this new curriculum, right away from primary, because remember, the making of the lower secondary school curriculum is an outcome of the reformation of the primary school curriculum. So the primary school curriculum is meant to feed into the lower secondary school curriculum, such that the product which comes out of the primary suits in the lower secondary school curriculum, and the two talk to each other with ease. The curriculum was designed with the aim of being assessed with this do. Now, over time, because of the dynamics at play of making money and taking education not as a service but as a business, the business gurus realized if we toe that line, we cannot make money. Remember, I'm talking to you as an authority because I come from the private school. Now, you go for the softer target, what they call in the other language, the low-hanging fruits. So how do we market our schools? Outrightly, the so-called good schools refused or rejected or trashed with the marks. And UNEB embraced it with the two open hands, and they said, guys, welcome. We are going to assess normally. And that is why Gilbert is asking you of
if
the
you say they
descriptor.
refused it and then NCDC and UNEB impacted it, one would think that it was coerced or forced onto you.
Yes, it was. It is. You see, Amon.
Yet you are the implementers.
We are on a national board. The government has a department called Education Standards. it should have done its duty to go and cross-check what is happening down there. But do you know their budget? I will not go into those details for today. We are discussing academics. Now, because of that, so we failed. The implementation collapsed. Now, you have two things which are happening as we talk. There is a school which is implementing thematic curriculum, and there is a school which is not implementing it at all. And there is another school which is implementing neither nor, a mix of the two. Now, you come to the lower secondary school curriculum. But you see, for me to explain this lower secondary school curriculum properly, to bring out what these questions which were coming out, you need to understand the basic. Now, at the primary level, there is a policy of automatic promotion. Now, what does automatic promotion mean? I just have to go to school and pass through the system. Whether I study or I do not study, I will automatically be promoted. That is why you realized that UNEB had more than 8,000 pupils under you, which meant they were ungraded. And this is a sham. This is a scam. I cannot have been in school for 7 years, plus the 3 years of nursery, and you give me a U. Which kind of education is this which you are doing? Now, we have been benchmarking by word in the world. The best country that is that provides us education is Finland, where we go for benchmarking across the world, save for maybe Singapore in the Eastern world. But even today, Finland is reforming. It is reforming its education. What is Finland looking at? Now, the Finnish now are looking at what we call the phenomenon teaching, or the teaching by concept. Now, for us, we are still here. I scored a D1, I scored a D2. These things, for heaven's sake. Finally, as I conclude, we used to have graduates, people who own degrees, and under them, we had technicians. Now, these technicians were purposely trained with the skills to help the other man of theory, the academician who has the degree, and below him these technicians would help us to exams. And that is why we are having this debate now on ground zero. I salute you.
Interesting. Dr. Rwanga, someone, Mugome is listening from Korno and said the problem we had having in education system is because we have children as gold, as resource, as profits.
Wonderful, wonderful. Suppose the private sector had not come in at pre-primary, at primary, at secondary, at university, at vocational, where would we be? Wouldn't we be voted out of power? That is a very serious question. The private sector king is how government can bail out the private sector. In our days when we are in charge of the state and the government, to fill in and help the private schools, and we used even to share textbooks and anything lacking which comes to the attention of the inspectorate and the Ministry of Education. Now the private sector has been left, and indeed public the teacher. They look after their teachers relatively much better than the government teachers. And the private sector has not even had issues of saying, you are science teacher, you are going to get a better pay. You are arts teacher, you are going to get less. So you find that they have even come in with some innovations of transport allowance, of lunch, of what, okay, which is a big credit. So to say that private, it is not fair. Okay. If anything, it may be the other side, okay, of the government schools, because these are government schools which are essentially helped in each and every aspect. Now, why does it come at the end of the day that they are also demanding 2 million or 1 million? It means they are more exploitative than the private school which is renting land, which is paying teachers, paying electricity, water. And private schools, by the way, they are servicing very difficult loans. Okay.
Interesting.
Yes, so I would like a way
Thank
where
you.
we appreciate, and when they are giving medals, they should give medals to private schools. Some have started in very difficult circumstances, and all over a period of 5 to 10 years, you are seeing tangible results in infrastructure
Thank
and
you.
even in performance.
Interesting.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Luanga. Time is not on our side, surely, but we still have a lot to really talk about. The publicizing of the results, if I can put it to you, Dr. Muganga. Do we have the scored what? Those who are scoring 8 in 8 in towns, and someone who are, to me, the best student is someone who has scored 20 in 8 and is in the village, attends school once a week, compared to one as 8 in 8, but has been has gone through the system, the good system here in Kampala, from the time he was in kindergarten to the time he finishes campus.
Listeners of Ground Zero. Now, here is something I want to draw the attention of everyone to. All of us are, and maybe we get malaria. So if you think back in, say, 1980, the medicine for malaria, and it was so itchy and everything. You remember that time. That if you look at the cars that were being driven during that time on the roads in 1980s, if they were there, you can't see them today. Meaning things change. If all those things are changing, why is it that education cannot change? Coming back to Mr. Busobozi's kind of submission. Now, you asked a question about the teachers, good teachers and bad teachers. We are here talking about an education system that is still wanting. The same teachers went through the same system. So that means they also have huge gaps that they need to bridge. You cannot talk about a terrible system of education and also say you have good teachers. No, you don't have good teachers because they're building to catch up and be better. So for me, what I'm thinking is as simple as this. That indeed, if you look at what is happening in the private sector, the private sector has a fertile ground for them to behave the way they would behave, which is okay. Legally, they are doing what they are supposed to do, which is business and to earn a profit. And you can't take that away from them. Why? Because if you look at Uganda, Uganda has the youngest population here in Africa, that with a population growth rate of 3.2%. And the young population of about 78%. And if you look at 0 to 18 years, they are almost 70. So you have demand for education. The demand for education is almost inelastic. So they are going to charge the prices they want. But as I wind up, Amon.
As you wind up, Doctor, what is Victoria University doing different from the others to shape and transform the education system in this country?
Here, talking about results, remembering and memorization that we need to deal with. Other countries like Mr. Buso was talked about Finland. There's I think is a listener who talked about Canada, US, everywhere. They have infused technology into their curriculum. Here we are testing our kids about SST, science, English and math. So these people are going to have a problem. I want you to remember that today, artificial intelligence, and in 5 years, it will be 5,000 more intelligent than a human being God has ever created. So what are we teaching our kids if we are not bringing technology into it and their future? We are not talking about it. So it's high time NCDC actually embraced and want to do at Victoria University that is different from other universities. So one of these things is as simple as saying that graduating a student who has 0 years of experience, that is impossible. You can't even do it. It is criminal. It is a malpractice. So we are not doing that. We are saying you are sitting in our classroom or classrooms for 15 hours a week. The rest of the time, we are going to place you somewhere to gain experience that we can't teach you in a classroom. or you're going to find a place on your own where you can gain some experience. As you graduate, you have 2-3 years of you understand what happens in the world of work. When they are recruiting you, you can comfortably say that this is what I have done while I was here, and so and so can attest to this. You have this experience, not 0 years of experience. That is a malpractice. Number 2, you cannot graduate a student who is not tech savvy. We are saying if you come to Victoria University, forget your pen, forget your book, do all you can, you will emerge out as a person who is technically empowered. You have digital competencies. If your employer says they need a report, they no longer look at your old handwriting skills. No one who needs a handwritten report. So the handwriting skill that is emphasized by every school and university where they sit and handwrite all through their time at school, we say that is dead. So you have to know how to type. If you can't on a keyboard as if you're a chicken walking on it. No, you know you can type 150 words in a minute. If you can't do that, then you compete with the rest of the graduates elsewhere in the world. We cease to look.
Nigeria requested our Ghanaian brother what they call the technical secondary schools, where now they were training top-notch students to go into these various areas. They have an arrangement of province. Each province could be picked on either 2 or 3. Our challenge here, we cannot give the best to everyone. For schools, I think, Wairaka, Ichitunga, Ichigezi, and another school.
Okay.
And in the agriculture, they call it zoning. Let us have that sort of arrangement that which schools are well off. Can we grab them for the more you work in an education system, very much wanting. Some have been fed to Middle East to do domestic jobs. So as we are doing all of this, the key player in this thing is the welfare of the teacher and the welfare of the pupil.
All right.
Yes.
God bless you, Dr. Wanga Absobozi. Godfrey Absobozi.
Thank you so much. Now, as we end this program, we have to know this. There is no way we shall have a better education of this country when we do not take care of the teacher. Because this teacher facilitates learning to take place. And the product that comes out, I have been part of the reform program of government to improve the quality of the teacher, where we developed the national teacher policy. Now, the implementation bit of that teacher policy has its own challenges because the politics at play keeps disrupting the technical guidance as provided by the technical people. We need to readdress the human resource of this country. Otherwise, we shall come and talk, but when things are going berserk. As I conclude, education is a right. The duty of government is to provide education to its citizens. We accept government has no money, and the private schools came in to supplement what government is doing. May government continue regulating and supervising the private sector such that what is done in the public schools is exactly the same thing which is done in the private school. We should run one system, not to appear to be having one area training children who are going to be servants of the other children, and we are all being subjected to the same school system of education.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maganga.
Thank you very much, Emon, and the listeners and colleagues here. They have really articulated the things excellently. So perhaps for me, what I could add, and again echoing into what everyone else is talking about, we need to recognize that education is a public good. And the earlier we recognize that, that's when maybe we'll start thinking of prioritizing it and ensuring that all the resources that we need can be really diverted to the education sector. And being a public good, it is also a right to every child in this country. That means every child in this country is entitled to meaningful education. And meaningful education always is going to cost money. And let us also wake up. And I believe in this government, and my belief is based on the fact that they have tried to liberate everything. They have tried to revolutionize everything they can. They can still liberate this education sector. They can still revolutionize it and make it one that Uganda needs. Make it one that has dropped every element of the person who colonized us and wanted to create a workforce that is listening to them, that is following instructions. Not a workforce, not a human capital that can create, that can innovate, that can solve problems. So we should really flip it upside down and come up with an education system of creators, of innovators, of critical thinkers, of problem solvers. And what we are doing today, the education system within all this, the different cycles that we have, is not giving us that. It is giving us a group of dependents who are going to depend on government, their parents, or anything, and that is a crisis at that point. But most importantly, the people who gave us this terrible education came up with something which we used to have. We used to have something called indigenous African education, and they have, of course, changed that, modernized it, given it different names. It is the competence-based education we see. It is the deeper learning we see. It is the authentic education we see. But we had it here, and they made us abandon it. So we need to empower NCDC to the future in this country. It is I've always advocated that if there is this language they kept on telling us during COVID, the essential workers. If they are essential workers you can ever look at, I think a teacher should be ranked in the top 3 essential workers in this country. And without segregating science or arts or anything, once you're a teacher, and you should be rewarded as such. That is how we are going to liberate, because if we have a teacher that is happy, if we have a teacher that is motivated, you can trust them with assessment. This is the model I advocate for, continuous assessment. And then this country can create school districts. And school districts, when I say school districts, I don't mean the districts we know, the 136 or something. I am saying look at regions with the same similar socio-economic needs and maybe similar opportunities. Dr. Rwanga was talking about Dr. Rwanga, sorry about that. Dr. Rwanga was talking about the oil. Yes. So when you look at a region that is really has an opportunity to extract oil, that region should have a curriculum that is promoting the opportunities of that particular place. There are certain things that are going to cut across. Mathematics is always going to cut across. English is going to do everything. But I've always seen a meme that is moving around that it's only in Africa where English is compulsory and agriculture is an option. So you can wonder. So we have to start creating school districts that cater for the needs of a particular region. And then once we have those students immersed in a curriculum that is relevant to them, relevant to their people, relevant to their community, then we are going to begin seeing relevant education. Now, 2 things I want to end with here. Number 1 is that any curriculum, any education that does not mirror the real world of the people, that is a wrong education. So education should be relevant to people. It should really be able to leave someone with something they can do. If any student finishes a particular cycle and can't do nothing, they can't do anything, you know that that education is not good. Ladies and gentlemen, what we know is that the age, the era of knowing so much and you put it in your head, that is over. Today, it is doing something with what you know. If you can't do anything, then you know you're not educated. Number two, in education that does not have technology embedded into it, you know that it is not taking your child anywhere, it is dead, it is going to leave them as business as usual. They can't compete in the world we are in today and the world we are headed to tomorrow. So therefore, government needs to look at those two things. The last thing I leave with parents and you young people in school. There is this mindset that has been infused in everyone that the only place that will make you successful is going to university. No. I will tell you that actually the movers and shakers of the country that we are in, or the world, different countries I've been, and I've not been to few, I've been to closer to actually 51 countries. The movers of those countries, of their or the respective economies, they are the people in the informal sector, people who have gone into vocational schools, people who can create things. Sometimes you may not choose to go to university. You may choose to go in another part, in a vocational school, in a technical vocational. You can be creating things. You look at Singapore, it has two paths. You can go academic, you can choose to go technical, and it is okay. So this mindset that a person who doesn't go to university is a failure, it is right. As long as you can create something that is demanded by the population and it can bring income in your pockets, that is education. Please pursue that. So therefore, government should sensitize people to understand that mindset also is killing things, that people are avoiding things that would have created this country, given it the power it needs to go to a theoretical area. So thank you very much, Emon, for giving us this opportunity, and the listeners who have glued themselves to ground zero. We don't take that for granted.
Interesting. Thank you, Dr.